Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road, just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria, and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO.
the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Today on Sports Files, we'll preview the upcoming Memphis Grizzlies season with 3 distinguished members of the local media. On Wednesday night, the Memphis Grizzlies will open up the 2015-16 NBA season when they play host to the defending Eastern Conference champion Cleveland Cavaliers and star LeBron James. Expectations are once again high for the Grizz, who last year advanced to the Western Conference semifinals and jumped out to a 2-1 series lead on the Golden State Warriors before injuries derailed the Grizzlies' chances of advancing. The Warriors would go on to win the NBA title. Well, there's no guarantee that a healthy Grizzlies would have beaten the Warriors, but many believe it was quite possible. Now the Grizzlies get ready for a new campaign with the same core unit that has helped produce playoff appearances each of the past 5 seasons. And now that core unit of Marc Gasol, Zach Randolph, Mike Conley, and Tony Allen will get some additional help with the team's offseason acquisitions of Brandon Wright and Matt Barnes. Today we pull out the old crystal ball and examine the Grizzlies' chances this new season. Chances of not only getting back to the postseason, but perhaps getting to the NBA Finals. And joining me for our annual Grizz preview is our usual cast of characters. Grizzlies beat writer from the Commercial Appeal, Ron Tillery, the creator of the Grizzlies Pick and Pop column for the Commercial Appeal, Chris Harrington, and co-host of the Fish and Stats show on Sports 56 Radio, and sideline reporter for Grizzlies television broadcasts, Rob Fisher. And it's all next on Sports Files. Fish, Chris, Ron, great to have you guys back.
Good to be back.
Thanks so much. Always appreciate your input. All right, so on a scale of 1 to 10, the Grizzlies off season would be a Fish?
Let's go with, how about an 8.5? I think keeping Marc Gasol, obviously, was great. That was first and foremost. But I think the additions of Matt Barnes, Brandon Wright, were great because I think it brings a different dynamic to the team. You know, Grizzlies have struggled so much in the past, playing stretch fours, playing athletic teams, and you know, you throw John Lure out there to see if it worked, and it just didn't. So now they have that ability to do that, play different styles, different matchups, and I think that was perfect. Obviously, the only thing that keeps it from higher than an 8.5 is what we talk about every year. Didn't get a shooter, although I don't think it's as big of a problem as maybe it's been perceived.
Barnes has the ability, Chris, to knock down that 3, but he isn't the shooter per se. Gasol was the main thing they had to do in the offseason. So how do you grade it out?
No, I think like an 8, something like. I think if you judge it against reasonable expectation, like what's the best you could have done given your circumstances? Mm-hmm. It's like an 8 or a 9 because Gasol was it. Gasol doesn't move them forward, but not bringing him back would have been a disaster. And so you keep it going with Gasol, and then I think Brandon Wright exceeds expectations with your mid-level exception. I think around the league, people were surprised they were able to get him for that money. And they created Matt Barnes out of nothing. It was a trade exception that was going to expire, and then they had to maneuver that through two different deals to basically create this player out of nowhere that they wouldn't have been able to sign in free agency. So I think given what they had to work with, I think it was a very successful offseason.
Ron, I promise I will not bring up the fact that you predicted Gasol would sign elsewhere, but how did you think the offseason went?
I agree with Chris. I think it was an 8. Obviously, getting Marc was big. You know, not just for this season, but it really solidified their future because you look at Mike Conley being a free agent this coming summer, and bringing Marc back goes a long ways toward keeping Mike Conley. So I think in doing that, you know, it's status quo, so to speak, but it's also toward the future. I didn't really like the Matt Barnes deal because, you know, I think the Clippers got rid of him because he stopped making shots, and this preseason has kind of spoken to that. But I love the Brandon Wright acquisition, and I think more than shooting, as Fish alluded to, people get too caught up in getting the shooter. The Grizzlies had to become more versatile. So I like the fact that they have a plan B now and a plan C with athleticism and two-way players and guys that can play multiple positions.
Chris, a lot of teams have improved in the West. The Grizzlies appear to have improved on paper. How much have they improved? Are they a better team than last year on paper?
I think they are a slightly better team on paper. I don't think they fundamentally changed what they are. I think, they're a little bit deeper, they're a little bit more athletic, but I think they're within the same, margin of error, the same range as they've been for the last several seasons. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think there was more reason to move down than move up, frankly. It's more likely to move down than move up. So I think stabilizing what they have is not that bad of a thing.
Ron, would you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think the issue is going to be age this year. They're going to be a good team. This is a 50-win team. This is a team that can be at the bottom of the elite in the Western Conference, no worse than the middle of the pack in the Western Conference. But they have 7 players who are going to be in their top 10 as far as the rotation goes, who are 30 years old or older. And as you saw last year, injuries kind of took them out. So that's going to be something to watch. But I thought Dave Yeager did a good job of managing the roster last year. That's going to be his biggest challenge this year.
Fish?
Well, I think that I think they're improved. I think they're better because they are more versatile. I think that's the biggest thing. But the age thing, I don't really get into as much. I mean, yeah, Zebo's older, but Zebo plays an old game, and I don't think that changes him. Mark's not old. When you talk about the injuries, I think your biggest concern is Mike Conley, and he's not old. But yeah, you have to stay healthy. Tony Allen, had injuries before he even got to Memphis, and he had some injuries late last year. So staying healthy is huge for this team. It's huge for everybody, but especially for a team. The Grizzlies are unique compared to a lot of other teams in that they can't afford to have an injury. They don't have LeBron to bail them out, or Steph Curry, or James Harden, or Kevin Durant to bail them out when somebody's hurt that can just take over the game. They need everybody healthy, and we saw that in the playoffs last year.
Ron, it shouldn't be an issue, but who are the starters Wednesday night when they open against Cleveland?
That's a great question. It appears that Dave is sold on using Jeff Green at the small forward. Courtney Lee has absolutely earned the right to start. I mean, he's shooting the heck out of the basketball. And I get it. I mean, Courtney always starts fast, and then he somehow fades. But you kind of see a different body language and a different attitude with Courtney Lee since training camp started. But the real issue is, who do you trot out there at small forward? It appears to be Jeff Green, but Tony Allen is making his case. I mean, here's a guy who's not as big as the coaches would like at that position, maybe not as versatile, but also, in Tony Allen, you get a guy who plays like he's 6'9". I mean, so if I were just going with my feel, I think it would be Green and Courtney Lee. But if you would ask me what I think they should do, and I think the proof is there, given how they started last year, I think you roll with the continuity and the chemistry and the intangibles that Tony Allen gives you. So in my view, it would be Tony and Courtney.
Fisher around these guys all the time. It seems like it's more important to some players. Jeff Green has come out and said he wanted to start. Courtney Lee has told me he wanted to start. TA, not so much, but you got to think on the inside he wants to start. How important is it who's starting?
Well, everybody who plays wants to start. I mean, whether they say it or not, I think you want to. But in the grand scheme of things, once the decision's made, you go with what you are, and you just want to win, and that's what this team wants to do. I thought with an entire training camp and coming into this camp, and an entire summer with the team and traveling with Marc Gasol, maybe that would really benefit Jeff Green. And if Jeff Green, you can get what you want out of him and you can figure out how he works in with that starting 5, you go with it and great, and maybe it's different. I just haven't seen a difference from what we saw a year ago. And with that being said, if I had to guess, I would say that it's Tony and Courtney come Wednesday, because I just haven't seen a big difference in this camp than what we saw last year with how Jeff works with that starting unit.
Chris?
Every game this preseason, as of this taping, in which he has had all of the options available, he has started Courtney Lee and Jeff Green. He has talked. I'm talking about Dave Yeager. He's talked repeatedly about wanting more size on the wing, and they invested a lot to get Jeff Green. So it seems to me, unless he's seen something he really doesn't like, and I've seen something I don't like, but it seems like unless he's seen something he doesn't like, he's headed towards Courtney Lee and Jeff Green as starters. I'm sort of with Ron. If it were me, I would go Tony Allen or even Matt Barnes, because I just think the chemistry would be better with the starting lineup with those players, because they're pure role players who can play more on the perimeter. And I just think Jeff Green fits better off the bench, where he can attack the basket more. He's clearer driving lanes. It's more of an up and down game with the bench players. I think Jeff Green should be the sixth man myself, but I'll be surprised at this point that if that's not the starting lineup, Courtney Lee and Jeff Green.
It really does seem like they're trying to put this square peg in a round hole with Jeff Green. They're trying to make it work when, like he just said, Chris, as of this taping, we just see how much more effective a guy like Tony Allen is working with the starters. He knows how to cut. He finds the driving lanes. He backdoors. And it just doesn't go that smoothly with Jeff Green.
For the record, I agree with Chris. I think Jeff Green coming off the bench may be more of a scoring option. That's the way I would go. But and Tony Allen's so infectious. He can get you right out of the gate very quickly. But with that said, and anybody could jump in on this one, they have invested a lot in Jeff Green. How about if early in the season again he struggles one more time? Is he a possibility for a midseason deal?
Sure, but I mean, at this point, he's on an expiring contract, and expiring contracts used to have value because teams were looking to create cap space in the summer.
Right.
But with the way the cap's exploding, every team will have cap space next summer, so that expiring contract doesn't really have value anymore. So I don't think he's a particularly valuable trade chip. And so, I think they're so crowded on the wing that if everyone's healthy and if Jordan Adams gets healthy, you could see them looking to make a move to clear that out a little bit and clarify the pecking order. But I don't think they'll get as much value coming back for trading Jeff Green as they gave up to get him.
Fish, somebody brought up about the fact that this team's getting older. There's no joke about that. These guys are aging, but they're still playing at a high level. Popovich was on my mind because Greg Popovich has a whole different school of thought. Rest guys, give this guy a day off, give this guy a day off. Do you think the Grizzlies, as they are aging, will have opportunities now where Zebo sits a game, Gasol sits a game, Tony sits a game? Do you think that he could take, Dave Yeager, a page out of Popovich's playbook?
Well, I think one problem with that is you know how important each win is because of seeding in the Western Conference. We saw that in the playoffs last year, too. So you want to get your highest seed. Another problem last year was early in the season, Grizzlies didn't have any games where they really blew people out. They left people opponents stay in games, and it was tough to get guys rest in games. I thought Dave did a good job managing minutes last year, getting guys rest when he could, stealing timeouts, stealing quarter breaks, getting guys a couple extra minutes here and there. Because it's not necessarily the minutes played, it's more minutes rested, real time minutes rested. And I thought he did a good job of that. But I think certainly you look to do it more when given the opportunity. And, Grizzlies struggled with teams that they should beat last year. So it was tough to just find those days where you could just give guys off because you can't give those games away. I think he'll try to manage it better, but at times it's just very difficult.
Ron, as close as the Grizzlies have been, and last year we know the situation, they were up 2-1 on Golden State, they had the injuries, the Warriors came back and won it all. We had an offseason where there was a lot of moves in the West. The Grizzlies are still picked 5th or 6th. Why?
Well, there's no question that they play the brand of basketball that they play better than anybody. But they're also one of the oldest teams in the league. And this isn't an original thought. I mean, Chris has made this point on commercialappeal.com when we do our podcast. I think, they have to start figuring out which of these young guys can play and bring some juice to the roster, whether it's Jordan Adams or Russ Smith or now we're going to see Michael Green. When you look, to your point, at what the teams have done to stay competitive or ahead, they've infused young talent. And one of the reasons why I was a little cautious about the Matt Barnes trade is because the Clippers got off a 35-year-old and they went and got a young gunner in Lance Stevenson. That's kind of moving the needle, and so I just think that's where it comes from. I mean,
so are they not looking to the future? Right now they're trying to see what they can get done with this core unit.
They're just all in.
And they're not looking to the future, Chris?
Yeah.
Well, it's tricky. Obviously they need to win now. The core is set up to win now, and your best teams develop talent while you win, which is what the Spurs have done. But I think I would like to see younger players getting more of a chance, but I'm also sympathetic to what Dave Yeager's trying to juggle with in terms of a deep veteran roster and the need to win games now.
How deep does the rotation go, Fish?
Well, you have a shot that there are going to be guys that won't play on given nights that would surprise you. I think, I think you play 10, some nights 11. I mean, your 5 are going to play a lot, but then you have now with more depth, you have different rotations you can use depending on how the game's going, depending on what the other team throws out there at you. So I think it could change on given nights, but I think you're going to see a lot of guys play, and that goes into getting guys rest as well. Plus now you have a small lineup, big lineup, athletic lineup, long lineup. I mean, you have different lineups now that you can use because of the changes that you've made.
Most important player other than Gasol and Conley. I think we would agree those two are the most important players. Or anybody have a different opinion? All right, so give me the third most important guy, Ron.
Yeah, you would start with me. That's a good question. Third most important guy, it would have to be Jeff Green. I mean, Jeff Green's got to show him something. I mean, he's had a very indifferent training camp and preseason.
Wow.
And he is the young wing player that they've been searching for ever since they traded Rudy Gay. Now, people mock me when I say this, but it's the truth when you talk to people and give them truth serum. If he could only just be Rudy, and he's not even that good right now. So, yes, Jeff Green has got to be a dynamic force on the wing for the Grizzlies.
Chris?
I'll say Courtney Lee. I mean, their record last season in games where he scored 15 points or more was incredible. Their record in games where he hit at least 2 threes was incredible. And they've sort of shown when they get outside shooting of any significance, they're really hard to beat. They just don't get it very often. And so if he can somehow become more of a 14-point-a-game, 15-point-a-game player than an 11-point-a-game player, if he has sort of that career season in this contract year, that could be sort of a tipping point for the Grizzlies if the rest of the team around it stays the same.
I agree, Fish.
I like both answers, and just to go different, I think I said it last year too. Zach Randolph, in that, Zach has kind of sacrificed his game, his production over the years to win. He's getting older when you talk about the age, but he's brought it every night. I mean, last year he came to play every night and was solid every night, and you need that from him. Without him being Zebo, I think it changes the dynamic of the team. So I think his importance as he continues to get older and continues to change his game because of his age, I think is very important.
All right, let's talk Western Conference as a whole. I'm putting you on the spot. Who are the 8 playoff teams? Ron?
Wow, okay, so let's start with Golden State, defending champions, and a young team built to last. San Antonio, with Aldridge being signed as a free agent. I don't know why people aren't talking that much about the Thunder. I mean, they've got 2 of the best 10 players in the league, in Russell and Westbrook, and they're going to be healthy. Houston, Memphis. I think the Pelicans are a team to watch. I'm losing count. You have to keep count for me. The Clippers, I didn't mention the Clippers.
Right.
And then,
that's 7.
It's hard to rule out Dallas, but, we'll see.
Chris?
I don't like Dallas this year. As much as I love Rick Carlisle, and I think he's sort of a miracle worker, I don't know if he has the tools. I think those 7 teams, are universally agreed upon, those first 7. I think the 8 seed's up for grabs. Utah would be my pick. I mean, they were a dominant defense last year after they got rid of Enes Kanter and put Rudy Gobert in at center. And, I think Gordon Hayward could have an all-star kind of season on the perimeter. And, they're a point guard away from really making noise, but I think they could get the 8 seed.
I agree with you. I think you take Portland out from last year, and I would say probably take Dallas out from last year as well, and replace them with Oklahoma City, and Utah would be my 8th that I would go with.
All right, give me a quick reason or two why you think the Grizzlies will be in the Western Conference Finals. What will it take? You may not believe it. What will it take for them to be in the Western Conference Finals? Fish?
They have to stay healthy. I mean, because of the brand of basketball they play, and as Ron said earlier, they play it better than anybody in the league. They're a tough matchup for anybody come playoff time. They could beat any team if healthy. They can beat any team in the West in a series. They could lose to any team in the West in a series, but they can be competitive with any of them. So, being healthy to me is number 1. We saw that when the team went to the Western Conference Finals, and so it's being healthy, getting some luck with the matchups and seeding. But other than that, I don't see why they couldn't.
Hard to argue that, Ron?
It's very hard to argue that. I would add to that, in addition to health, I think they have to have consistent quality shooting on the perimeter because we saw it last year. You take away the whole Tony Allen, Mike Conley injury part, Courtney Lee was great in the first round against Portland, went to the tank against Golden State. So that's going to always be an issue when you get into the postseason because of how the league is going today. They need consistency and quality shooting on the perimeter.
Maybe even defending the perimeter because of so many teams in the West now shooting the three. And we saw there were times last year the Grizzlies were just terrible, giving up double-digit three-pointers to teams.
Right. And it's not outgunning teams. Like I know people are like, we need this shooter. We got to put up threes. And I agree with Dave Yeager. It's not about how many you put up. It's
how many you make.
It's the percentage, right? So in other words, you can't have a team go 13 of 32 from three against you, and then you're 2 of 13. That doesn't work.
That's a good point, Chris.
I think health is and specifically Mike Conley's health. And last year was an extreme situation because he fractured his face. But we forget he had ankle, wrist, and foot problems even before that. And I think it's become like a rite of spring that Mike Conley is worn down when you get to the spring. And even though he missed like a dozen games last year with injury, and honestly, you'd want him to miss games even if he stays healthy this year. Right. And even though he played what was close to a career low, at least since he's been a starter, like 31 and a half minutes a game, he was still worn down. And I would be concerned that the backup point guard situation and the situation with shot creation around the perimeter is such that you can't afford to not play him heavy during the season and get where you need to go. But to me, Mike Conley needs more rest, and you've got to get him close to 100% for the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes back to what I was talking about with the Pop. Maybe not exactly what Pop does with San Antonio, but sometimes Conley's going to be on the bench. You would have to think he's going to get a little rest, and maybe that's where Russ Smith comes in as a backup to Beno at the point guard, and you just give Mike the whole night off. All right, guys, now the big prediction. The record and the seed. And I know you haven't digested every little game they're playing and all the whole situation, but I won't hold you to it. Fish?
54.
What was it, 55 last year?
55?
55, yeah.
I'll go 54. I think over 50 is kind of the benchmark, and from there you're determining seeding. So I'll go 54 and 5th seed.
5th seed, Chris?
I reserve the right to change this before I put it in writing next week. But right now I'll say 52 wins in the 6th seed.
52 and 6.
Yeah, I'm in that ballpark. I'm thinking there's still a 50-win team, 50 to 52, and 5th or 6th.
5th or 6th seed.
Again, if Kevin Durant's foot flares up, then you move him up. But right now he looks healthy.
Again, key injuries around the league could be a difference maker. The most valuable player for the Grizzlies after the 2015-16 season will be Ron.
I tell you what, Marc Gasol needs to have an encore season if this team is going to break through. So he still remains as great as Mike Conley is, and I'm not trying to shortchange him. It might be 1 and 1A here, but I'm going to go with Marc.
Chris?
Gasol. I mean, he does so much on both ends of the floor that, like, to me, the whole thing sort of revolves around him. And if he's not playing at an All-NBA level, like, they're not going to be where they want to be.
I'll go ahead and go with Mike because I think Mike's just as valuable, and hopefully if he stays healthy for the whole season, he could be the MVP of the team, because when other guys go down, he can still steer the ship. When he goes down, things change a little bit. So I'll go with Mike.
10 seconds. He could be the MVP, but can he ever be an all-star in that Western Conference?
It'll be tough, but he's certainly getting the respect from everybody.
Sure
so, yeah, sure. Let's say yes. This year,
it would be
all-star
nice,
Mike
right?
Conley. Yeah.
Rob Fisher, Chris Harrington, Ron Tillery, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate the analysis.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Greg.
And we'll take a break. Overtime is coming up next.
3, 2, 1.
The Memphis Tigers football squad has taken the nation by storm. Well, not quite by storm, but they have turned plenty of heads. While the Tigers did play last night at Tulsa, we unfortunately don't have a result because we taped our show earlier in the week. We do know that last weekend the Tigers upset the Ole Miss Rebels 37-24 in front of more than 60,000 at Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium. It was the largest crowd for a Tigers game at home since 2006. The Tigers fell behind 14-0 before rattling off 31 straight points. Junior quarterback Paxton Lynch threw for 384 yards and 3 touchdowns, earning him American Athletic Conference Player of the Week honors. Former CBHS star Anthony Miller caught 10 passes in the victory. With the win, the Tigers improved to 6-0 on the season and won their 13th straight game dating back to last year. Now, earlier in the day, the late John Bull Bramlett, former Tigers two-sport standout, was honored by his alma mater and the city of Memphis as a section of Tiger Lane was dedicated to him. Bramlett's wife Nancy, sons Andy and Don, and their families were on hand for the ceremony as John Bull Bramlett Lane was unveiled. The Bull began his college career at then Memphis State back in 1959, starring on defense at linebacker and also playing catcher on the baseball team. Bramlett would go on to play professional baseball with the Cardinals and then 7 seasons in the NFL with 4 teams, beginning with the Broncos. Bramlett passed away last October, but his memory will never fade. And that'll do it for now. Remember, you can catch any of our previous shows by heading to our website, WKNO.org, or checking us out on YouTube. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by
Infinity of Memphis has moved to Germantown Road, just half-mile north of Wolf Chase Galleria, and is proud to support WKNO for its quality broadcasting and service to our community. Quality and service? No wonder Infinity of Memphis feels at home on WKNO.